Well, I want to thank all of you for joining us here tonight, all of our past and present student athletes, coaches, administrators that are here, all of our Hall of Famers that are here. And before we get started with the interview portion here tonight, I just want to let you know that I've had the opportunity to speak with our newest Hall of Famers. And the one thing that really stuck out to me when I was speaking to them was how much Clarion has stayed with them. I think it was John Hughes that told me that Clarion is not the brick and mortar. Clarion's the people. And that is abundantly clear tonight. How many of you have come back to join us tonight on this momentous occasion, the 30th anniversary of our Hall of Fame, and to induct all these new members to our Sports Hall of Fame. And another note that I thought was really interesting as I went back through was that all of our athletes here tonight were coached by Hall of Fame coaches. And that says something, doesn't it? It says that Clarion is committed to putting quality coaches to develop quality people in the classroom, on the field of competition, and in life after they graduate from here. I think that's a great testament to what we do here. But nobody came here to hear me talk about our Hall of Famers. They came to hear from our Hall of Famers. So let's do that, and we're going to start with our first one this evening. She was a two-time national qualifier in track and field. She is part of the only pair of siblings in Clarion Hall of Fame history to be here. Joined with her sister Taryn, the track team was undefeated in dual meets from 1981 to 83. Her record in the 400 hurdles stood for 26 years. In a sport where records are broken all the time, 26 years that record stood. In 2007, she was a Clarion Distinguished Alumni honoree, and she's currently the president at Shippensburg University. Laurie Carter. Put that there for now. Go ahead and clip this on your lapel right there. You really gonna do it. Just place that in your lap. Laurie, welcome back to Clarion University. I think the first question that everybody has on their mind is, we looked at the football schedule for next year. Clarion and Shippensburg at Highmark Stadium, the culmination of the 150th anniversary here at Clarion. So are you going to be wearing blue and gold? Blue and red.
Is this a trick question?
I think it's serious. I don't know.
I will be wearing blue.
That's fantastic. So the story of your recruitment, every athlete here tonight has a story of how they ended up at Clarion University. And yours involves a very special person, a coach that is here right now, that is Bill English. Why don't you talk about that?
Well, for those of you who know Bill English, he is an extraordinary person. I am originally from New Jersey, and I've met lots of other athletes who came to Clarion because of athletics, really. Coming into the state as an out-of-state student was not something that was happening for lots of other people if you were an athlete. So Bill actually recruited my sister, who is 3 years older than I am. And she came to Clarion and was a fairly successful athlete here.
She was pretty good, as I recall.
And so as a result of that, I came and joined the Clarion athletic family.
What do you remember about Coach English, his coaching style, how he would push you?
You know, he pushed us really hard, but he always did it with sort of a gentle, caring spirit. He was a coach that really sort of encouraged us, not just as athletes, but as human beings. So we worked really hard for him because he was the kind of person that you wanted to be successful for. And I think that his record as a coach here speaks for itself. He's an extraordinary human being.
Well, as I said, you went undefeated in dual meets over this stretch from 1981 to 1983, and I don't think we're being too modest to say that you had a pretty big hand in that. You were obviously a 400 hurdler. You held that record, but that was not the only event that you competed in. It was, in fact, wasn't even one of only 10 events that you competed in.
Well, that was at a time, and Bill English and I were talking about it earlier today, and it was a time when track and field was really a team sport. And so our meets were competing against other teams, and points counted. And so if the team needed points to win the meet, I was willing to try an event so that we could get those points.
It's a completely different sport now, isn't it? Because there's so much focus on the invitational aspect of it, focusing on your own individual times. Do you think track has lost something because of sort of that shift in focus?
Well, I think that any time you can compete as an athlete as part of a team, you're gaining something. So the idea that you are willing to give of yourself even more for the greater good is something that really helps build character in young people. So for me, being a part of that team is something that really kind of laid the foundation for how I operate in my everyday life now in the workforce.
Let's talk about your signature event, the 400 hurdles. It's not an easy event. It's an event that requires a lot of physical strength, but also mental fortitude, right?
Right.
Talk a little bit about your mental approach in that event.
Well, I think I entered the 400 sort of not knowing the race. I was a 400 runner in high school. And it was like, okay, it's just the 400 over hurdles. I was also a hurdler. And so it was really about getting through that 400 and not thinking about the hurdle part as much as it was really about the race. And so when you're running the 400, you divide the race so that you know that at the end you'll have enough energy to push through. But when you're running over the hurdles, you have to also make sure you get your steps right. And so for me, it was sort of the perfect combination of athleticism and sort of mental fortitude on really holding it together till the end.
Really forces you to be tough, right? You have to do those things that people aren't capable or willing to do in that time frame, right?
Right.
So let's talk about your relationship with Taryn. Where's Taryn right now?
There she is.
Hey, Taryn. As I said before, the first pair of siblings in the Hall of Fame in Clarion sports history. If we threw a couple pairs of sneakers out here right now, who's winning that race?
Well, isn't that obvious?
No, that's a good answer. That's a good non-committal answer. I like that.
Taryn and I have this conversation regularly. And she insists that if we were to compete today, she would still beat me. Ask her about our bicycle ride.
Taryn?
Taryn and I are teammates. So the beauty of us being sisters and teammates is that while we were also very competitive, our specialty was a different event. And so that enabled us to really use athletics as a way to really forge bonds as sisters as well.
Do you feel like you were able to get the best out of each other with the way you pushed one another?
Absolutely.
Let's talk about your career after Clarion. Obviously, you've spent many years in higher education since your graduation from Clarion, and right now, you're at the point where you're at Shippensburg University and you have the opportunity to maybe have the most impact on a student's life that you've had previously in your career. What's that transition been like at Shippensburg?
Well, it's been wonderful, and it's interesting because, and my staff will tell you this, I very often look back to my track and field experience as laying the foundation for my work as a leader. And so right now, SHIP is in sort of a transformational place, and so one of the things I say is, it's a marathon, not a sprint. But right now, we have to sprint, because when you're running the marathon, there are times when you have to do that. So I really use track and field as sort of a metaphor for leadership and a metaphor for life. The skills that you need to be tough on the track are the same skills that you need to be a leader. And so as I am looking at the future at Shippensburg University, I often look back at my past at Clarion University because it is the state system that really provided me with the foundation for where I am today.
Is there anybody here with you tonight that you'd like to take a moment to recognize, take a moment to thank? Is there anybody in particular you want to mention here this evening?
Absolutely. Of course, I want to thank my sister, because without her, I probably would never have started running track. My brother Mark and sister-in-law Yolanda are here. My husband Gary, who is with me every step of every journey, and I love him dearly, and I'm so thankful for him. And my coach, Bill English, is here, and I think it's quite remarkable that after all these years, he would take the time and effort to be here with me. And while she's not here for me, I also want to thank the Chancellor, who has been a really terrific mentor and support for me during my first year at SHIP. And I think not just because I'm a president at SHIP, but also because we have this special Clarion connection.
Ladies and gentlemen, Laurie Carter. Thank you so much. That was great. Remarkable, remarkable. Our next guest we're going to welcome on stage played for two legendary Hall of Fame coaches in Gene Sobolewski and Charlie Raslavich. He went 31-10 in 4 seasons as a Golden Eagle football player here, 31-10, and was part of a dominating defensive effort in the PSAC championship game in 1983. He has 293 career tackles. He was an All-American. He was All-Conference. He was All-District. He was all everything. John Hughes. Hold on to that. Just put it in your lap. John, you had the privilege of being recruited by some of the best names in terms of Clarion's long, proud football tradition. But at the time you were recruited, you didn't really know much about Clarion. Is that right?
That's right. I didn't know anything about Clarion until the charismatic Coach Payne came over to Canton, Ohio, and he told me the story of Clarion football. At the time, they had 25 straight winning seasons. They had just won a championship 2 years prior, and they had this incredible coaching staff that had been there a long time. But the best thing about the coaches was that they weren't only good football coaches, they were great people. So I was very fortunate to be recruited by Coach Payne.
Let's talk about that coaching staff a little bit. We're going to jump ahead of where I thought I was going to be at this point. But one of the things that you mentioned to me was when you practiced as a team, it wasn't so much about the length of practice. In fact, practices were very short and intense, but very well disciplined.
Well, the coaches were good enough that we could have shorter practices and still be better prepared. But the best thing about our practices, I thought, was Coach Quinn was my defensive line coach. And Coach Quinn would start every practice with a joke. Sometimes he would tell a joke, or if we wanted a funny one of the players would tell a joke. And in honor of Coach Quinn, I thought I would tell a joke so funny that it would make your hair fall out, but I can see some of the men have already heard it.
Another one of your coaches, Charlie Raslavich. We're gonna go back a little bit and jump around, I suppose. But the 1983 conference championship game, the defense stood tall as injuries took their toll over the course of the game. You held East Stroudsburg to 84 total yards, negative 16 rushing, and 13 total sacks. You had 13 tackles and 4 sacks in that game. Do you remember that?
I remember that game, but the biggest challenge was I had Kevin Ewing on my left, I had John Haslett on my right, And it wasn't a matter of beating the offensive guys. You had to beat Kevin or John to the ball. So to get any stats, if you see Kevin's stats, I think he has 400 career tackles. I'm racing against John and Kevin to get to the quarterback. I had 4 sacks, and Kevin had 4 sacks, and John had 4 sacks. So that was very defensive-dominated game.
But going back to that game, Coach Ruslavich said after that game that was the best defensive effort he had ever seen. For a guy that had that much success, what's that mean?
I'd have to agree with him. We lost our first-string quarterback, our second-string quarterback in the first half. We were on our third-string quarterback, so that was a lot of fun. I never had so much fun as in that game.
You know, you talked about playing next to Kevin Ewing and the Haslets. You came to Clarion as a linebacker.
I did.
And you were in in the middle of the numbers game here when they moved you to the defensive line.
Well, to give Coach Ruslavich and Coach Sobolewski, Tony Linan, Coach Quinn, I was only 210 pounds. And we had linebackers 250 pounds and defensive backs 230 pounds. And Kevin Ewing was about 210 pounds. So these coaches didn't just look at our size. They said, who's the best players, and try to get them in the game. And Coach Jacks has a lot to do with that too. But they put Kevin and myself on the defensive line. When we played in that game, Kevin was 210 pounds and I was 210 pounds. And we weren't even as big as our defensive backs. And they saw something that nobody else could see and put me on the defensive line.
You mentioned sort of this cast of characters on the defensive line. Kevin is obviously here. Some other folks from your era are here. What does it mean to you that all these years later, 35 years later, there's still a bond among teammates?
Well, the great thing, Kevin was my big brother in the fraternity. He's a year older than me. Lou Weirs is in our fraternity and also on the defensive line crew, and Eddie Goff and Tony Colecci. But we were great friends on the field. We were great friends off the field, and we're still great friends today. So it's that's one of the good things about Clarion is I really feel that from so many people. They're so inviting and they make you feel good, so you want to come back.
When you were in college, you roomed with a couple guys that were athletes. Pat Carble, you mentioned, and Jim Buechner, some guys that are already in the luminaries.
And John Swersler.
And John Swersler. I forgot about John.
He was a captain of the swim team, yeah.
So who would you say was the best all-around athlete in that group? And you can say yourself if you really believe that.
Well, we had 2 football players, a wrestler and a swimmer, so we can cut out the swimmer, right? Sorry, Coach Miller. I guess it depends what we're doing that day, because if Jim Buechner is going to tie you up in a knot, we can say he was the best one. But I don't know. We were all kind of different. The funny thing was Jim would come into school at 232 pounds, and he wrestled 196. So he would come in looking like a linebacker, and Pat Carble was our quarterback. He was like 240 pounds, and I was the defensive lineman at 210 pounds. So if you walked into our apartment, you didn't know who did what. So it was an interesting group.
You mentioned to me that you think what's really amazing about Clarion is just the idea of the coaching family and the player fraternity as it is, that you're all coming back. And like I said before, you mentioned the idea that Clarion's not brick and mortar, it's people, and it's these relationships that are built.
Well, I kind of get that when we talk about a church. A church is not the brick and mortar, a church is the people. And you don't feel anything from a building, but when you come back and you have these people and you have this great atmosphere, that gives you that, sense of belonging. So, Clarion to me is much more than the brick and mortar. You got a beautiful campus, but the day that I got recruited, one of the things I liked when I came to campus was how inviting everybody was. And then our coaching staff, I come back and see Coach Jacks. My favorite story about Coach Jacks, he was a 2-year starting quarterback at Penn State.
Right.
And I always tell him, it's too bad you played quarterback before they invented the television, or you'd have been pretty popular.
Let's talk about your academic career very briefly. You mentioned to me that one of the professors that really meant a lot to you was Joe Grunenwald. And when he became president of the university, you thought it was very fitting.
There's like so many examples. It's fun. I love what you're doing, but Rich Herman was starting when I started. And Dave Cadis was starting as a graduate assistant when I started. Then he becomes athletic director. And I had a class, it was called Consumer Behavior. It was my favorite class that Dr. Grunewald taught, and he was in the marketing department back then. You know, go figure, he was an engineer and he was teaching business, and you know, then I find out years later, I read that he became president, and it's just so nice to go back to the school where your teacher is president, your grad assistant is athletic director. You know, you see Coach Jackson. I used to go to Coach Sobolewski's house and see Ruslavage, and I always go to Jack and Doreen Quinn. I still have a great relationship with them. And you have all these people that you stay connected with, and that you don't want to go back just to see a building. You want to go back to see the people.
Is there anybody here with you tonight you'd like to take some extra time to recognize, to honor, or even if they're not here with you this evening, is there anybody you'd like to thank for your success at Clarion?
Well, there's just two groups, my family. You know, the best lottery you can win is the parent lottery because you can't pick your parents. And I'm very fortunate to have my mom of 93 years. She escaped from the retirement community to come to this tonight. Yeah. She, hi Mom. She couldn't wait to get out. And my brothers and sisters and nephews and nieces and great nephews and nieces, my son Tyler and my daughter Elena, Tyler's girlfriend Danny, and then of course my fiancee Monica and all of her family, many of which are here tonight. From that family group, I'd like to thank all them for all they've done for me.
Yeah, you have 15 tables here or something, right?
That's why they're cheering and clapping. And then from the Clarion group, you know, I've mentioned a lot of the coaches and my position coach, and he's been a lifelong friend, Coach Quinn and his wife Doreen. And then all the coaches, you know, that I had were wonderful that we talked about. And then the players, my D-line crew with Kevin and Lou and Eddie and Tony Colecci and the whole team, my roommates, Jim Beekner and Pat Carble and John Swerzler, great people. And there's somebody that we all appreciate, and I'm sure the other sports, wrestling has a great camaraderie coming back, but Bo Garatano and his wife Joyce have reconnected the football alumni with a football program. And Chris Weibel, the head football coach, who I think is a great coach, he has allowed us to stay connected. So that's a lot of fun for me. I certainly appreciate all those people. And then finally, our family suffered a tragedy where we lost my daughter Elena, and I can't tell you how many people from Clarion supported us. And our family really appreciates that. So I'd like to thank you for doing that. And then I'd like to dedicate this to my daughter Elena and my son Tyler. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Yeah. Good job.
Great job.
Good job.
It's time now to welcome our next Hall of Famer. She was the first 1,000-point scorer in Clarion women's basketball history. She was recruited by Hall of Famer Doris Black, part of the first two PSAC West Championship teams in program history. She was a two-time first team, I can't talk anymore, a two-time first team all-conference performer. And she was also a performer with Cool T, Lisa Lee, in The Crew, all the way back in 1986. Lisa McAdoo. Lisa was impressed I found that. I'm just going to go ahead and clip this right there. Okay, and you can just keep this in your lap. All right, Lisa, you said earlier tonight you thought you were going to be a little bit nervous. How do you feel now that you're actually up here?
I feel great.
Yeah?
I feel great.
Well, your path to Clarion was a little different than most other people's, I guess you could say. So if you could, why don't you give us maybe a little bit of an impression about how you ended up here in Clarion, Pennsylvania?
My path was when I think about it now today, it was awesome. But when it was happening, it was sad, I guess. Kid in the street of Philadelphia, ended up moving upstate New York with my aunt at 17. She took me in. Can you move this down?
No, you're good. You're fine.
And I went to live with my Aunt Diane, and I went to Fallsburg High School. At 17, I went there to played basketball there my senior year. And all I knew was basketball, and I really didn't have any goals, no dreams, no aspirations. I just played ball. I was just a ball player. And other people saw the potential for me to have an opportunity to go to school, something that wasn't in my goals. My goal, I just wanted to go to the military because I didn't have any goals and dreams or anything. So I was told that I wasn't going into the military, I was going to go to college. And that wasn't, I was an average student, so that wasn't even an option for me, thinking about it. And it was like 3 awesome people at Fallsburg that kind of like, one Esther Grossman forced me to pick schools. And Clarion, I stopped at the C's, and Clarion was definitely one of them. That's true story. And what she did, she also sent Clarion University the video of me playing basketball. And then I got tricked by my Coach Feldman, and Lonnie Lindsay, who's here today, into coming, she said, was like a basketball camp weekend. You know, you want to go play ball. I didn't know it was a recruitment weekend. And then because I didn't want to go to college. And when I got here, it was some like really awesome students that were here at the time, you know, the upperclassmen. And it was like an awesome experience. And I was like, wow, I could really go to college. And it still didn't seem real. And Coach Black offered, I guess, a scholarship, and I went to college. And that was just going from really like homelessness to like a college. And it was like, wow, I'm gonna have a little bit of stability. And that's all it was for me.
Let's talk about Esther Grossman, because you told me that she was a person that you didn't realize until years later how much she had done for other kids like yourself, and how much she meant to so many people. How much of a force was she in your life?
She was like that quiet storm. You didn't even know that she was doing all the things that she was doing for you. Like, again, like sending the video to Clarion University. And, you know, as a kid, after I graduated high school, she gave me a job driving the after-school van home, the kids home, because I had a job during the day. Afternoon, I would drive the kids home, and I remember when I would get paid, she was saying, "You need to save your money. You need to invest it." I'm like, I need to live. And she told me about, investing, putting money up, and all those little things that you're like, yeah, all right, I'm going to spend this money, and so when you get older, and you don't realize all the seeds and stuff that's planted in your heart and soul. And when I came back to Fallsburg after retirement and stuff, I decided to come back to Fallsburg. And I didn't know that Esther Grossman had passed away. So I looked her obituary up on online, and she was an amazing lady. Like, you don't know these things of the people that's helping you. And it's unfortunate I found out all these things after she had passed away, because I wanted to thank her. But I read her obituary, and she was like a top athlete, gold medalist. Like, she did some awesome things that we didn't know as high school students. That's just Miss Grossman, who's just yelling at you, telling you, go to class, you're going to college, you're doing this. That's all I knew of her. And to read her obituary, and my job now, I have her obituary inside my cabinet. I work in school suspension, and I remind the kids about her. I said, one day I'm gonna be to you guys what she is to me. And it's unfortunate that I wasn't able to thank her, and I'm glad tonight there's some people here tonight that I actually can thank in this time in life. Anyway.
Let's talk about one of those people, Coach Black, who got into the Hall of Fame last year. She's here. What does she mean to you?
Oh man, that lady has no idea how awesome she is. I think she knows how awesome she is, but she doesn't know how awesome I know she is from my soul, because I gave her a really run for her money those 4 years in college. Like, she threatened me so many times to whip me, and I really gave her a run for her money. I would get our team in trouble, and she would say, McAdoo, she's not running the play, get on the line. And I would look at like, let's do it. You know, when you're young, you can just run, like, all right, let's run. And she ran and ran us, but I gave her a run for her money. But this lady, everything she ever said to me, I listened. Everything, Terry White, she's here. Everything she said to me, I listened. But Coach Black, I think she had a hard time dealing with me, and she had some help from Terry White. And I wasn't allowed to come to practice unless I went and met with Terry White. She was the EOP program. And it was like, I could not step in the gym unless I had met with her. It was like a balance and check thing with those two. And but I listened. And you know, I would be in Terry White's office like, here we go, I'm just here. But what they didn't know is that I listened to every word they said. I heard everything they said. I heard every life's lesson, every threat. I heard it. But you felt the love, and that was what's important. And I knew that she believed in me, and it didn't start to kick it until I was a junior that I really like caught on. I became a captain, and I started to walk that walk that she was trying to get me to walk prior. But you know, everything is in time, it's in God's time. So it's not when you get it is that you get it. And I got it before it was too late. And everything I am today, her and the rest of the people that poured that concern, that love into me, made me be here today, and I appreciate you.
Well, we could talk about the things that you did on the court with your teammates, but I really think that it sounds like there were some special people, but it's redundant. It's such a special moment that you get to share with your teammates here.
Oh man, I have two teammates here right now, and it's two special ones. The two that are here, Kathy Evans and Tammy Holman. What's special about them both was, one was forced on me by Coach Black. We had to have this buddy system, and she made Kathy Evans, my buddy, and I was like really didn't want to really be bothered by anybody. And Tammy's, this is talking about both of them together. Kathy Evans, Bud, as we call each other, she never gave up on that buddy thing that Coach put. Whatever Coach's goal was for it, Kathy achieved that, and it took me a while to achieve that. But Tammy, what I love about Tammy is I didn't know the play. That 1-4 play, I couldn't get it. And I would just, instead of telling someone I didn't understand the play, I would just be just like, whatever, we're going to run again. Let's do this. We're just going to run. And Tammy's like, you don't know the play, do you? I was like, nah. And Tammy just took the time to show me step by step, and and I learned to play. I was lazy. I learned it, but I learned to play. And I thank you, Tammy, for not giving up on me as a friend, and we became best of friends. It's so dope. This is so dope. I just want to tell you, this is so dope.
Is there anybody else you want to thank tonight, Lisa?
Oh my God. The people I need to thank is everybody that came here for me. Like, this is the part I'm trying not to cry. Like you got Lonnie Lindsay, who, this lady, man, like, she drove me here to come to visit school, drove me to come to the school. She came to my graduation when I graduated from here. When I retired from the Bureau of Prisons, 2016, she came to that. And this lady's traveling on the roads for this. And then I work with her now in the high school, which is, so dope that I can talk to the kids about her and they know her. And, then she drove this long distance again. And like everybody here drove so far to see me. My psychology teacher, come on, that's so dope. Like, I want to thank her. Like, I thought she was like an awesome teacher, and I was in her class like the first year that she came to Clarion, and she's here for this moment. And like, like, I just go on. John just always had my back for like ever. And Melinda, I went to college with her here. Tracy just had my back, and it's just like, then you got Terry White, you know, she always thinks I'm supposed to be responsible, but I tell her I'm not responsible. I'm just trying to just do the best I can, you know. And I got my cousin LaDawn and my homie Linda Blandon. We went to middle school together. I didn't know she was coming. Like, it's so dope. Like, everybody that's here is a part of my life, and love me. They all love me. They know me, and they love me. And Kathy's mom, like, I went home a couple times. I didn't have nowhere to go because I didn't have no family. Let me tell you, I'm not going to cry. All these people are here are my family. I don't have one blood relative out there. Not one blood relative, but that's my family. And that's these people here. I went home with Coach Black so many times on vacation. I went home with Kathy Evans so many times, and these people embraced me and loved me, and they are my family because they're the ones that have been there with me, for me consistently. Like, everybody here, these are people in my life on a regular. My special, we was in Little Sister to the Q's, and we was like enemies in the beginning because I wouldn't let her use my magazine, and like this is really awesome. These are my family, and wow, I could just say thank you to all of you for loving me, and it's just so dope. It's just dope. I just think this moment is so dope.
Lisa McAdoo, everybody.
Yeah.
Killed it. Killed it. You were awesome. You did a great job. Oh yeah, don't forget that. That was dope. Let's welcome our next Hall of Famer up here this evening. He contributed 21 years to Clarion as an athlete and a coach. 3-time PSAC champion, 4-time NCAA qualifier. He compiled a record of 113, 28, and 5. At the time, it was the 6th best record in the program's storied history. And he's part of one of the best teams in Clarion history, a 17-0-1 record in 1986. Ken Nellis. Clip this right here. Okay, just put that in your lap. Ken, you were a wrestler from a family of wrestlers. What was that house like growing up?
Yeah, our house was unique. I'm the 6th out of 7 kids in my family. My sister was the oldest, and then 6 boys. So we always had a lot of activity in our house. My parents were very loving. My mother was really the kind of disciplinarian of the household. But we had a lot of activity. We always had other people in our house. It wasn't, sometimes, summer times, there were, my older brothers had friends that didn't have a place to go in the summertime, or they worked in Pittsburgh. So whether my brothers were there, or some of the times their friends were living in our house. So it was always an active household, definitely, very active.
You were a state champion in high school, and state champion in the state of Pennsylvania. That's a pretty big deal. That's pretty good. But when you stepped on Clarion's campus for that first fall practice, that was a wake-up call, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really was. I was fortunate. Like I mentioned, my brothers. My brother Keith, he was a state champion in 1973. Then my brother Kevin was a runner-up in '74. And then my brother Craig was also a runner-up and took 4th. And then my little brother was a runner-up and state champion also. So I came from a family of some really accomplished wrestlers. And Yeah, I thought I was pretty good. So when I came to Clarion, it was very eye-opening. This first couple weeks, didn't get a lot of takedowns those first couple weeks. It was just ironic. Last week we were at Hershey for the United States Wrestling Hall of Fame Pennsylvania chapter, and one of the guys that was a former teammate there, Steve Jasterbeck, he was working for the Hall of Fame, and he was a 134-pounder, and I hadn't probably seen Jasterbeck in, I don't know, 30 years. He didn't finish school here at Clarion, but he was the guy that just kicked my butt the first 2 weeks, and so it was kind of fun seeing him. Ironic seeing him last week, and then here we are today. So it was pretty cool.
Well, you told me that one of the big transitions that you had to make was that you spent a lot of time just wrestling in high school. The college game requires a lot more conditioning, a lot more weight training. That was one of the really big transitions you had to make.
Yeah, I wasn't always built this good, I was, yeah, I did in high school. My brother Craig particularly, he was a real hard worker. He lifted weight, he trained hard, he worked hard, and I probably just was, I guess, naturally gifted as a gifted wrestler. So things came easier to me. And with my ability, so I was just getting by on that type of ability. And when I came to Clarion, sometimes in the weight room I would struggle with the bar and 35 pounds on the bench press and stuff. They joke about that. My brother Craig still does, and how I was out of my element in the weight room at Clarion that first couple of years.
Well, a big part of your development when you were at Clarion was you redshirted in 1985. And that gave you a little bit of a different perspective on the sport. You're sort of off the mat, and instead you were watching a lot more than you were doing.
Yeah, it was unique. I wrestled my first 3 years at Clarion, my freshman through my junior year, and just the way our team was kind of lining up, we had a lot of really, really good middleweights in our wrestling room, and so. I was transitioning from moving from 142 to 150, and again, I wasn't very big, strong 150-pounder. So, Coach Bub, we had talked about redshirting and sitting aside, but he gave me the opportunity not only just to redshirt and to train and wrestle in open tournaments, but he kind of used me as a little bit of a coach. I spent a lot of time going over tapes and with wrestlers and some technique and some other things. So that year, when I redshirted, I did a lot of, I guess, just instruction, teaching, and besides the wrestling with the other teammates on the team. So I was a little bit of a red shirt and a little bit of a pseudo coach.
You mentioned Coach Bub. We saw him here this evening. He is Clarion. What does he mean to you?
Yeah, I was extremely fortunate growing up. The three probably most influential men in my life all have the same name, Bob. My father, Bob Nellis, he's not able to be here tonight. He just had triple bypass surgery last week. He's 86 years old. My dad was fantastic. As far as a loving father and somebody that modeled great work ethic for us. And then my high school coach was Bob Sire, and he was a great guy that I got to be around for a lot of years. And then Bob. So all three of those guys. Coach Bub was just fantastic as far as teaching, obviously wrestling, and just knowing how to put together a team, integrity, sportsmanship, and just hard work. There was no way to cut corners. There's a lot of wrestlers here today, and we have so many, I guess called Bubberisms, that we, things that Coach Bub would always say, and we could all probably name 5 or 10 of those here tonight. And I see some of the wrestlers kind of laughing and shaking their head, but so there's the things that we take from Coach that transfer over from wrestling to our lives today.
Coach Bub he'd give you guys just enough rope sometimes to hang yourselves. Talk about those New Year's Day practices. Yeah,
it was kind of funny. We always, Coach was, again, smart enough guy that he would give us the words of wisdom. You want to soar with the eagles, you can't be out hooting with the owls. There's one of some things that he used to say. But, for New Year, we'd be up here for training over the semester break, And if we, December 31st, if we were going to get together and guys were going to have a party and there was going to be some drinking, Coach, would tell us, of course, not to do it, but he's also wise enough to know that there was going to be something probably that was going to transpire, take place. He warned us about it, but then, January 1st, that morning, we'd have an 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock practice in the morning, and it would be a lot of running, a lot of loud music. He wouldn't like our music very much, sometimes that we played in the 80s and things, and sometimes he would bring in John Philip Sousa marching band music and play it really loud in the wrestling room. And what's wrong? You don't like my music? And we were like, oh my goodness. But so if people did partake, on December 31st, we paid a price January 1st in the morning with a training and working out.
Let's talk about that 1986 season. Really special season here at Clarion. At the time, did you have the perspective of what you guys were accomplishing or what you guys were doing, or was it business as usual?
I think along the way, it was pretty much business as usual. Coach Bob never let us get too far ahead of ourselves. But as we were progressing, I think at the beginning of the year, I don't know if we were even ranked in top 20 of, the amateur wrestling news teams. And then we started off in the first match of the year. We wrestled Oklahoma State, and a bunch of guys stepped up and wrestled really strong matches. One of our teammates, Randy Richard, upset one of their accomplished wrestlers, and just the whole day got rolling on pretty well. And then as our team, clicked off win after win against much higher ranked teams, I think we kind of felt ourselves, hey, we are pretty good, and we can really accomplish something special.
Ken, is there anybody here you'd like to recognize or thank for being here, or even if they're not here tonight?
Well, yeah. I do want to thank my dad's not here, and like I said, he had bypass surgery about 9 or 10 days ago, and he's doing pretty well. But I've got I've fortunate to wrestle here, and then come back as a coach. And my wife and family, my wife said to me when I first moved here, Coach brought me back in 1990, and she said, promise me we won't be here more than 5 years. And 27 years later, we're still here living in Clarion. So it's kind of unique. I have, I've got my wrestling teammates, of course, my immediate family, my family that I grew up with, and then just a lot of people from the community. But first off, my immediate family, my wife Cindy, my daughter Brianna, and Luke are here. My youngest son Seth is senior in senior prom night, so he's at the senior prom. They're here. But then my sister Kathy, her husband Mark is here. My brother Keith, my brother Kevin came in from Atlanta. My brother Craig from Pittsburgh. And then I've got some roommates from Jefferson Apartment 201 when I was a sophomore in college. So they're here. It was really special that they're here for tonight. And then there's just the teammates that are here. I'll mention them in a second, but also just some people in the community have always, my friends, Dave Cadis and Glenn and Paul Ham, all the table back there. I'm glad they're here. It's great. The teammates too, really special. They're from the '86 team and some other teammates. I've got Paul Clark was a 134-pounder on the wrestling team. Mark Ciccarello was also a 34-pounder. He was graduated a couple years earlier, but special athlete, special teammate. Mike Cole, Kenny Hasselrig, Jim Beekner, Kirk Butterin. Trying to think somebody I probably missed. Some of my wrestlers, the teammates that I wrestled with that were here. And then there's several guys that I coached that are here too. So it's just, it's for me, it's special because of the number of years that I've lived in Clarion, that we made it our home. It's a great place to live, and I'm just really fortunate and honored to be sitting here tonight with so many people that built into my life. So it's exciting, and I'm glad to be here.
Ken Nellis.
Thanks, Sean.
Okay. Well, the last individual that I'm going to welcome up here tonight is also a member of the Clarion wrestling program. He compiled a 111:35 record that is 10th all time. He's a 1995 Division I All-American, 3-time PSAC champion, an EWL champion, helped the team to 2 EWL team titles, and yet his sporting career after wrestling had nothing to do with wrestling. It was all about rugby. Dan Payne. Bud? All right.
How many athletes are here?
I'm not sure, actually. So, Dan, my first question to you is, do you know what time zone you're in right now?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Do you want to share that? Or?
Eastern time zone.
Okay.
2 hours different from Mountain Standard because my son's naps. I know them.
Second, do you have any Delta Sky Miles that you would like to gift to someone that you may have just met?
I earned 160,000 United Sky Miles last year, so I have United Sky Miles, which doesn't help anybody out here, though.
No, not
Yeah.
So talk about your recruitment to Clarion. You were recruited by Bob Bub, and like Ken, I suspect he means a lot to you.
Yeah, I think he's every wrestler that's in here is here because of Bob Bub, without fail. Even if you're here 15 or 20 years after, the legacy and the tradition and everything that he built when he was here throughout his tenure has transcended time. It's phenomenal. So we'll talk about that at the end, but I haven't been able to thank him formally, so we can just give Coach a special round of applause wherever he is. You'll have to stand up at the end.
Let's talk about your transition to college from high school. Is there anything that sticks out when you made that trip to Clarion and those first couple practices, that first camp?
No, I think, and I'm going to be boring tonight, I'm going to say a lot of thank yous, but I think one of the things that sticks out for me is I had come here for wrestling camp from the time I was in about 6th grade to 10th or 11th grade. And when I had the opportunity to come down on a visit, we walked around the corner, and I still remember walking in the office, and Coach Bub was sitting there, and there's a little guy that some people know from Clarion, Kurt Angle, was sitting there, and he had just won his second national title, I think, probably 3 weeks earlier. And I walked in, and my mind was made up at that point, just because of a lot of
sales pitch.
Yeah, the sales pitch was over. The chance to come down and be a part of the history and the legacy. And I was a country kid from Western New York that Syracuse and Pitt and some of those other places were pretty intimidating to me. When I came into Clarion, the truth was that there were quite a few stoplights in this town. That's how I looked at it. And obviously, I should have married Nellis' wife because I was 5 years and gone. But because there was more to see and more to do. But that was a city to me when I first came to Clarion.
One of the parts of Clarion you got to see pretty often was Toby Hill.
I thought you were going to say the Loomis.
That's probably in
It's
there
still
too.
there, which is great.
I'm talking about your conditioning runs on Toby Hill. What were those like?
It was phenomenal, and it's pretty applicable. Toby Hill, we used to have to run it 3 days a week, 3 mornings a week. You could pick which morning you would want, but you'd run it 3 mornings a week in preseason. And it was 380 to 395, 400 steps, which I knew. And then when you'd get to the bottom at about 5:30 in the morning, you'd turn around, and I'd always just know, like, oh, here we go, 385 steps. And I wouldn't look up or anything. I'd just start counting the steps. And that came in to my professional career about 2 years ago. I was going through something at work where we knew we were going to have a huge budget cut, and we were going to have to get through a year with about a 15 to 20% reduction as managing an Olympic sport and national teams and all these different areas that we were going to have to cut in. And the first January 1, I woke up and I thought about Toby Hill. And I knew there were 365 days that I had to get through, but I never got to the top of Toby Hill. And there was that patterning and that education that I got down there that helped me get through the year of 2017.
That builds a team as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I mean, adversity always builds a team. That can't be legal. Do they let people run Toby still? In the morning when it's foggy, you can't be running that anymore. Where's Wendy? Really? I think fluorescent visors or something. Bibs.
Let's talk about the redshirt year that you took in your career. People take redshirt years for different reasons. They get different results, but yours was very beneficial to you in your wrestling career. Is that right?
Yeah, it was. I was a 17-year-old freshman, which my mother still doesn't, ever hear the end of because my brother stayed with football. I was a small freshman who grew 4 inches and put on 40 pounds his freshman year, which should have been my senior year in high school, or else we'd probably be having a different discussion about a different sport. But I grew a lot during that year and physically matured and wrestled 40 or 50 matches and got a second season completely out of it.
Well, you ended up wrestling at heavyweight, and as you said, you make that trip to Clarion. You see Kurt Angle, who obviously was a heavyweight here. You're part of a proud tradition of Clarion wrestling, and at that weight class in particular. Is that extra special for you?
Yeah, it is. I think, there's probably, how many 4-time All-Americans have ever been in Clarion? Brian, you can speak to this. How many? Only one, huh? There's 4-time All-American over there. Kurt Angle was only 3, and he was an All-American at heavyweight as well. So, it's humbling for me to sit up here and be a part of that tradition. Where's Testa? There's another one right back here as well. So, these guys did a lot of stuff. I'm the 5th inductee on a down year.
Well, with that said, let's talk rugby now. So how did that happen? How did you make that transition in 2001? Is that right?
Can we stop for a second? How many athletes are in here? Current student athletes. Can you guys stand up just quickly? And we'll give you a round of applause because just quickly, because you're all why we're here. I need to say this. I apologize because back in the 90s, we didn't go to bars at all throughout the entire season. And I remember sitting where you were in 1995 and listening to everybody up here talk on a Friday night and just wishing it would get over with. So thank you for sitting through this. But the person that we got to see last was John Calipari. So, it was pretty special and unique. So I'll just try to keep some levity going as much as I can to get to the end of it. But, we're going to go off script. Actually, we're definitely going to go off script. What was the question you just asked? Rugby. We'll forget about rugby. Don't even worry about it. I'm going to get to the thank you part because then we have to get to the big close.
There we go.
Are we good with that?
Let's go with it.
All right, I'm standing up. So my thank yous are going to be pretty quick, and they're going to go this way. And to John's point, and Laurie and Lisa and Ken, congratulations. But I'm a benefactor of sport being an educator. I grew up with a single-parent home. Sport was what filled the gap for me. And I'm going to go through a list of people that are all here tonight. And when we talk about people, like John said, my pathway is going to kind of tell a story that I didn't even know was going to be this full tonight. I have to start with my mom, where she's got her head turned. She's not yet to nursing home, but we'll sit on that. If you can, we're going to thank Mom. Can you stand up? We're going to thank my high school coaches who were my surrogate fathers, Tom and Jeff Kaler. You guys need to stand up because we're going to do this all at the end of it. No, stay up. Stay up. Then I came to Clarion because of Coach Bub. Coach, can you stand up, please? Right? When I came to Clarion, I came down this trip because of Ray Hartley. Where is Ray? Ray brought me down. My high school coach brought me down on my trip. Ken Nellis and Jim Thornton, where are you? You guys came in my freshman year. Please, you guys both stand up. Nelly's here. Where's Thunder? Right there. All right. Lou Tripodi was my advisor when I stepped onto campus in June. Please step up, Lou. All right. Mike Cole was my RA, another Hall of Famer. Where are you, Mike? Stay up. Stay up. So, yeah, my RA. And then, obviously, Nelly was there, and we kept working through everybody that's ever shared a beer, shared a laugh, been a part of the Clarion wrestling history. Please stand up. Dave Cadis, where are you? Please stand up. Right? All the Clarion wrestlers, Beeks, you're up. Everybody that's here, you guys are all part of this. And I'm going to talk to you about this in a second. Who else is here? Where is he? Lig. Coach Lignelli. You want to stand up or just give me the high five? That's good. Okay, so we're going to finish with this. And this isn't about me, obviously. The greatest thing for tonight that I can do is what I'm about to say. and this is going to go to every wrestler in here, and we talk about legacy and we talk about tradition and opportunity. There's an opportunity that we're going to seize in the new gymnasium to name the wrestling room the Robert G. Bubb Wrestling Room. Every single person that's clapping right now that's attached to that sport or that knows the legacy of wrestling in Clarion gets the chance to be a part of doing the best thing we've ever been a part of. And we're going to make sure that we do enough fundraising to make sure that that wrestling room always carries your name, Coach. So on that, I'm going to close with, now I'm not going to write it now. I brought it for this very reason, because I think if I wait, my wife gave me approval for a certain amount. If we wait for maybe another hour or 2 hours, it's probably going to go up. All right? And it's going to be a celebration. So, Coach, on behalf of everybody here, thank you. Thanks to the Hall of Fame committee for this opportunity. Congratulations to all the inductees. And let's raise some money and go celebrate. Cheers. Sorry.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you. Dan Payne, everybody.
So we're going to bring them up. They don't know this yet, but just because we're such great people and we wanted them to come back, each of them are going to get a little table memento to take home. And what's nice about it is it has our 150th logo in the middle to not only celebrate 150 years, but also it's part of the 30th as well. So they'll be able to take this home tonight, everyone that comes up here. So we're not going to give them to them as they come up, but wanted you to see that. Okay, let's get them up here. Let's have a little conversation, and then we'll get on to the finished business of the night. Let's bring them up in the order we have them in the program. First guy coming up here, if you'll stand, let me read a couple of things about you, and then we'll get you up here in the first chair. Jim Alcorn. Jim, will you stand? Jim was a quarterback here at Clarion, graduated in '68. He had a 2-year career here. He ended up transferring here from Pitt, which we'll hear about in a little bit. In 2 years, in a time when football didn't really throw the ball a whole heck of a lot, he ended up with 2-year totals of 3,878 passing yards and 41 touchdowns. It helped lead Clarion to its first PSAC championship team, among other things. So we'll bring up here first Jim Alcorn. Jim? Our next celebrant coming up on stage came to Clarion in 1992 as a women's basketball player. She was a tremendous basketball player. So much so that in my mind, ingrained, Clarion was really good the year before she came and had gone to either an Elite 8 or a Sweet 16. And when Mona Gaffney came, her first game at Clarion just sticks in your mind. She had 24 points and 20 rebounds in her first game. By the time she left here, she had scored 1,920 points and 1,079 rebounds. Pretty awesome player. Mona Gaffney Brazier. Mona? Would you go over and just help her up this to make sure she gets up the steps okay? Okay. Our third person coming up here, as was referred to, Peabody grad, Penn State quarterback, but came here at a time when football was good, but not great. And in coming here his first year, he was 500, and then he didn't have a losing season after that. He had 18 straight winning seasons. And by now I know you know who I'm talking about, Al Jacks. Al? At Clarion, there probably isn't another more magical name than Wade Shawless. Wade, where are you? Wade Shawless simply put together a record of 153, 5, and 1. Think of that. 153. He lost 5 times and tied 1. He had the NCAA record for pins, still has it in Division I, 106. So 2/3 of the time, you got pinned when you wrestled this guy. So if you just could last, which a lot of guys didn't, obviously, you really had a win instead of a loss. But this guy, something spectacular. Yes?
Thank you, Rich. You can finish now. It's done. You know, I wish my parents were here to hear that introduction. That was so good. Dad, because he would have enjoyed it, and Mom, because she would have believed it.
Thanks, Wade. Our next celebrant coming up here, representing women's swimming, is Christina Tillotson-Sheets. Tilly? She swam here at Clarion from 96 to 99. She was a 5-time NCAA champion. And in the sport of swimming, you're only allowed to swim in 28 events in your career, 7 a year. 4 7s are 28. She was a 28-time All-American. So every time she hit the water, she was an All-American. That's really hard to do. Next, we're so glad to have Pete Vukovich. Pete was a baseball player here from 71 to 74, All-American, drafted by the Chicago White Sox in 74, made it to the major leagues in 75, ended up winning a Cy Young Award, American League Cy Young Award winner in 1982. I think that speaks for itself. Pete Vukovich. And our final celebrant was a men's basketball player here at Clarion under Joe DiGregorio. He was just a heck of a player. Still the second most scorer in Clarion history, but when he graduated, had the career record for points, 2,011 points, and it was number 2 in rebounds with 1,120. They had a great magical year in 1977, 27-3. They won their first 19 games. Reggie Wells. You may all have a seat. You have the microphone. Testing. Hand that down to, oh, you've got one there. Hand one there to Mr. Shawless. Wade gets the first question tonight because I thought this would sort of be interesting to start with. There's been so many rumors out there about this X on the mat and pinning guys on the X and all that kind of thing. So why don't you let these people know what the real story is about the X, how many people you pinned on the X, how that whole thing got started.
I'm not sure how it got started, but I think I deferred to Dan Payne, let him come up. He did a great job. Attaboy, Danny. The X was something that our fraternity started. Every fall and every spring, we would raise money for different charities. Our fall in 73, I guess it was for the cerebral palsy. And one of our fraternity brothers in one of the meetings said, hey, let's do it this way. Let's put an X on the mat, and then we'll go out and, like a walk-a-thon, we'll get people to come up with some money for pledges and see if you could pin the guy on the X, they would give X dollars to cerebral palsy. So I went, no, we're not doing that. But before long, it ended up one thing that got to another, and there was somehow an X ended up on the mat. And at the end of the evening, we raised $3,400 for cerebral palsy. So that's the good part of it. The funny part was probably Coach Bub. I don't know if many people know Coach Bobby, but he's very conservative. And this was probably a little on the liberal side, putting an X on the mat. And he didn't know anything about it, fortunately. Greg Johnson, our assistant coach, did at the time. And when I went out, I was fortunate enough to get a cradle and a young man, and I was over there, and the X was over there. And so I had to slide him 40 feet or so across the mat to get him to the X. And as I was sliding him across, the crowd was getting louder and louder. It seemed like everybody in the gym knew it except Coach Bub. And about halfway over, from what I understand, I didn't see it at the moment, I was kind of tied up. Greg Johnson elbowed Coach and went, you know, I only know that because of the video, you know. And so I slid him over there. I jacked him up on his shoulders, and it was just a regular piece of white athletic tape. And when his shoulders slid across the mat, the athletic tape rolled up. And so when he got up after the pin and walked off the mat, it was still stuck on the back of his neck. And this was for my 100th pin, first guy ever collegiately to reach 100 in pins. And then Coach Bub came out on the mat, and I went, oh shit. You know, this is not going to be good. And he's standing there, and I didn't know it, but Charlie Slavage was, I wish he was here, God bless him. He was a great man. Anyhow, Charlie did announcing, it's, ladies and gentlemen, the first time someone ever reached 100 pins. And as I'm standing there, Coach was going, what the hell is that X doing on the mat? Now, Coach Bub, as you may or may not know, 4-letter words do not come out of it. The word hell is enough to scare anyone. I mean, that was, I was here 5 years, and that was the first 4-letter word I've ever heard come out of his mouth. And I said, what X, Coach? He goes, you know damn well what X, the X is right over. I don't see an X, you see an X? X was gone. But anyhow, and then, years later, when I met my wife out in California, I was a referee at San Jose State, and some people were talking, and she didn't know me real well. We'd only been dating about a month. And, that's I was refereeing, and that's the referee. He pinned every person he ever wrestled on an X. You know, so the story is like the fish that got away. It gains a pound and an inch every time you tell the story. So that's kind of how it went, but it was enjoyable. It was just a one-time shot, but it seemed to have gotten a life of its own. Dan, was that okay? Is that close to what we're supposed to say? Good.
Wade, if you wouldn't mind, hand that microphone to Mr. Jacks there. Al, you ended up winning 72% of your games. You came over from Slippery Rock, but your first year you were 4-4, in spite of the fact that you had Bo Garatano returning on the line. Right, Bo? You obviously had some kind of thought process, philosophy, what you wanted to do, and what you did. You won 73% of your games after that. That's pretty darn good. What were you thinking when you came over?
Trudy, I didn't know what I was thinking. I do know one thing. I was 28 years old when I got the job. I'd never really had any real responsibility. And when I started out, I felt like I was riding and shooting. You know, I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. And one of the things I knew I wasn't doing was political correctness. That was, you're fat, you know, and you got to get in shape. And I remember really clearly. And
Al?
Yeah. Keep it close to my mouth. Maybe you don't want to hear what I want to say, but one of the things that stuck with me early in my career was that as a sophomore in college, our coaching staff went out to Oklahoma, and that's when Bud Wilkinson, and they were winning all their games. And they come back with a whole new approach, and that was fitness. And one thing you had to do was run the mile, and you had to break 6 minutes, which didn't seem that hard. But I think we might have had 10 or 15 guys on the team that didn't make it. And they didn't really say anything, but most of us worked really hard at it. So by the time, I'll keep it short, get to Clarion, I thought, we're going to run, and we're going to get in shape. We may not play well, but if you don't make it, and some of these kids who are here right now will tell you, you were cut. You know, it wasn't like tomorrow you can run it off. And it became a kind of a pride thing, a winning attitude. We're all going to do this. If you don't cut it, then that's it. But I'm just using that as one example. I mean, I didn't want to be that hard, but it's a competitive world, and we recruited hard. I mean, we went out, I don't know how many times, recruited, and I asked the kid, you sign here, I guarantee you we'll get you a car, $100 a week. The only thing is on the bottom, they didn't see the fine print where it says after graduation, you know, so, but anyhow, we try to make it fun, Rich. I don't know, but you had to recruit. You had a lot of contacts. I'm just thankful that Waldo Tippin said, you know, since you're a Presbyterian, you get the job. And that's the truth. And the other thing was, you're not allowed to go in the Loomis. But anyhow, years flew by. Thanks.
Thanks. Christina Tillotson, just want to combine two questions here. We talked about a little earlier. Tell me a little bit about how you got to Clarion with Bill Miller. And of course, being a 28-time All-American, what was harder, winning a national championship or being a 28-time All-American? So take it away.
Okay, well, I'll start out with Coach Miller. I think anybody that knows Coach Miller knows that he is the type of guy that can walk into a living room and he could sell ice to the Eskimos. So he came into I was from York, Pennsylvania, and drove to York, came into my living room. And I think for the most part, like people in life, they just want to do something where they're wanted. And I really felt like Clarion was a place that wanted me. And, you know, there's Division I schools, there's other schools out there, but it was a great decision. And really, Coach Miller inspired me to come for a visit to Clarion because I think without him coming to my living room, I might have been a little bit reluctant. And then getting here with Coach Miller and Coach Van Dyke, it's a special place, and the swimming program had such a storied history, and to be part of that history, to be considered a legend, and I consider so many of the other swimmers that I swam with legends, and sincerely, Coach Miller is the legend. He's the one that got us all here, very similar to Coach Bub. But the difference between becoming a national champion and a 28-time All-American, to be a 28-time All-American, you also have to have really good teammates because, and those of you that know swimming know that the 28 of them, more than half of them would have been on relays. So each year you can swim at 4 individual or 3 individual events, and those other events would be relays. So the 28, I mean, you think about everybody had to have a good start on every relay. If you have one false start, there's 27, not 28. So, the years that we were able to, I was 7-time All-American 7 years, or 4 years in a row. The pressure starts to mount by the time you're a senior, knowing that you have 7 more. I think that, that speaks for itself. The national champion, that was nice, but I think the 28-time All-American speaks to the type of recruiting that Coach Miller did year after year, and the teams that we had.
Hand that microphone to Pete. Mr. Vukovic, always a pleasure.
Yes, sir. My pleasure, Rich.
A few years ago, I know you were honored with the bobblehead night down at Altoona, and you were there. You did a nice interview, not with yourself, but with Dr. Whitney before the game down on the field. And during that interview, you talked a lot about how Clarion was a special place for you and what it had done for you in your career and your family with Junior and all that kind of thing. You want to just talk a little about what Clarion has meant to you?
Sure. The funny thing about it all was I wasn't recruited by Clarion, and I wasn't coming to Clarion. I was going to IUP about 20 miles from Johnstown. And not long before school started, I had a phone call from the athletic director at IUP, and some type of paperwork got screwed up, and I said, "You can't come here." I said, "What am I going to do, Have you ever heard of Clarion?" I said, "Yes, I had football coaches back home. Individuals went to Clarion." He said, "I'll make a phone call up there and see if they'll have you go there." And he made a phone call, and I ended up coming to Clarion, I want to apologize to Mr. Jacks. Al said he drove me all around town trying to recruit me when I came up here, but I don't remember it, I thought I was coming here to play basketball and baseball, and other things happened, and it just ended up being baseball. But I was a 17-year-old kid also when I came here, and I guess the furthest I'd been away from my house was go to Homer City and play football against United, or go over here and play basketball in Blairsville. And coming up here really helped. It helped introduce me to the world, how to deal with people, how to be a part of it all, and what have you. And I think one of the nicer things about it all, because I can remember all the coaches in the athletic building, how well they got together. It didn't matter what sport it was, they all seemed to get buddies with each other, and I thought that was really cool. I felt I was negligent in my academics, but I have a young man, my son Junior, who graduated from here, went on for law school, so it all worked out, I guess. But I just only hope, as I had told you, that my being able to play professional baseball helped Clarion and the PSAC, the PSAC. There weren't a lot of individuals signing for baseball contracts out of that conference, northern part of the country and what have you. And today there's more, Matt Adams and some other young men from Slippery Rock. And I just hope my having an opportunity to do those things help lead the way a little bit for other individuals to get an opportunity. That's all.
Let's get Mona a microphone here. Mona, you had a sort of a similar story too. You started at Marshall. And that didn't work. You went home, and all of a sudden, this woman called you and wanted to come down and visit. You want to pick it up from there?
Well, yes, I was home working, and my father said, Guy Parsons called from Clarion, and she wants you to come and play basketball. And I'm like, okay, well, she realized I'm going to be a 20-year-old freshman when I get there. And he said, well, apparently she doesn't care, you know. So she came down and she sat down and talked to us and invited us up for a visit. And my dad said, well, it doesn't matter if she's coming here. You know, it doesn't matter. You're giving her a fresh start. She's coming here. So Coach Parsons said, well, there's one more person you need to talk to before you leave. And I said, okay. And I had to go speak to Dean Shropshire. And he told me to take 2 classes in the summer. If I make it through those 2 classes, and I'm showing him that I'm serious about coming here, getting a fresh start, he would let me be that 20-year-old freshman and play basketball. I'll have a clean slate. And that's how I got here.
And you graduated.
Yeah, and I graduated in 4 years.
What did Guy Parsons mean to you as you were going through your career, and how she saw you to the finish line, both academically and in athletics?
Well, it was more emotionally. My freshman year, I had a hard time getting through conditioning and getting used to going to classes and everything, and I called home a lot. And so my dad used to come to every single game and talk to her. They would just make sure she goes to classes, and, you know, she'll stop crying after a while. I was, my goodness, she's 20 years old, you know, grow up. And she just, you know, just kept pushing me. And she pushed me right through my senior year. And those 4 years went so fast that if it wasn't for her and Dean Shropshire, I wouldn't be sitting here.
Jim, you're up. Okay. You, if I remember right, Coach Jack saying you were a Penn Hills guy, right?
Penn Hills, yep.
All right. Peabody, Penn Hills. And so Coach Jacks gets here, and he's having a few good years. And you had a pretty good spring game down at Pitt, but somehow John Michael Osen didn't want you to be the starter. I don't know, take us through you coming to Clarion, sitting out 65, and how Al Jacks got you here to Clarion.
Well, yeah, I had gone to Pitt, and that year I had a pretty good spring game, and I was pretty fired up, you know, to play quarterback. I had a couple touchdown passes, and we go to fall camp up in Meadville, and had the depth chart there, and I was third team safety, which I didn't know how I got there, but it didn't seem like I was in their plans, and which, that's
no respect.
Well, that's there's a lot of guys, a lot of good players at that level, and some coaches, they see things differently, but then I started looking for somewhere to maybe transfer, and I want to have a shot at playing, And Mickey Catello and Lynn Armstrong, both from Penn Hills, were up at Clarion, and
They were already here.
They were already here, yeah. Lynn's a year younger than me, and Mickey was in my class, and they liked Coach Jackson. They liked what he was doing, and so I come up and got in pretty quick and sat out the year, and then played the next 2 years.
How was it sitting out? That had to be tough.
Well, yeah, it was. It was. You just have to. There's nothing you can do about it except try to make yourself better. So I, went to practice and I threw and, I did everything that I could do to make myself better and be ready for the next spring practice and be ready for the next fall.
66 was pretty special.
Yeah.
And 10-0, the second undefeated team, if I'm not mistaken. 52 team was 9-0. You guys were 10-0.
Yeah.
But you had a heck of a championship game. Tell us about the final drive at Westchester. Westchester was the team at the time.
Oh, yeah.
So and it was at Westchester.
Yes. No. It
was here.
The first game was here. The second game was down there. But,
so tell us about the final drive.
Well, we had it was a seesaw game, and they had gone ahead, and I guess, what was there, like 2 minutes to go or something like that? No more than that. Yeah, wasn't very much time left, so they were sort of playing a little prevent, and I just started throwing some short passes, and when we moved down the field, and I know I tell my grandkids this all the time, about how there's a fine line between being a star and a goat or an also-ran. I know I watched the films, and I think I was like 9 for 14 on the drive down there, but one of the incomplete passes hit the Westchester linebacker right here, right between the 5 and the 9, and he dropped it. If he catches that, they sit on the ball, and we had a nice season, but that's just the way that worked out for us. And
how about the final score? Who?
Jim Becker.
Pass?
In fact, I don't even remember this, Coach. We ran one of our sprint out passes, and we had a lot of injuries right toward the end of the season. Mickey Catello got hurt, and we started running out of fullbacks. And I think it was Ed Tappy he got hurt, and they put Dave Lewis in, who never played. And I called a sprint out left. Dave goes right. The linebackers go right. I went left, and Becker was wide open. So sometimes things work out pretty good when you don't think it's going to. But it was like a 9-yard pass, and we ended up winning the state title. Very exciting time. Yeah, thank you.
I got 2.
Reg, you have a similar story to some of these other folks too. You didn't have a direct path, as I recall, to Clarion. Pretty direct, but it was Pitt Johnstown, I think, was involved, right?
Yes.
And you went to Milton Hershey, and then this little Italian fellow named Di Gregorio somehow found out that you were available, went down and visited you, and the rest is history.
True. First of all, I loved your introduction, but Coach Lignelli, you knocked it out the park. I appreciate that, my man. I really thank you for that. But yes, Coach D recruited me, and I kept getting these phone calls from this guy. It was constant. I'm like, God, Jay. Looked under the bed. I think that guy was under the bed. It just continued. But the Lord put him in my life for a reason, and thank God he continued to pursue me, which I'm forever grateful for. And he's been a mentor in my life, more like a father figure, friend who's continued to oversee me. And he was the way he lived his life was a pattern for how I should start structuring my life a little bit better.
And the 77 team, you won your first 19 games. Do you remember more of the first 19 wins or the 20th game which you didn't win?
I don't remember the ones we won, to be honest with you. I do remember the one we lost, I think Coach D came and said, we always could count on you, Reg. You missed that free throw. I remember. And after that, I didn't feel too bad. I said, okay, that's enough of that. So, no, but
that was
I do
a
remember
special
that.
season, 27-3. You guys made it to the NEI National Playoffs, and I think you even won your first game there and everything. That had to be a very special year.
No, it really was, because the players that we had who I played with were just phenomenal. They really, they made the game easier for me, and it's a tribute to Coach D, how he recruited. And during that period of time, all the coaches who were up here were just legendary coaches. It was unbelievable, the talent that they had and how they can bring it out across to, all across Clarion. Clarion was just a magical place and a magical time. It was so much going on at Clarion. We had a Bob sub and a Kentucky fried. So, I mean, it was jumping up here, I tell you. So you kind of had to play sports or do a little bit of something if you want things to, go in your direction. But it really
You didn't go to the Loomis, so that was the other place.
No, I was too young for the Loomis. I didn't go to the Loomis.
Thanks, Ray. Let's go back to Mr. Shawless. This, you're such a good storyteller. It's hard to not want to go to a story rather than something real. We'll come back to you for something real serious in a minute. But you got to tell the pumpkin story. I'm sorry, but you got to tell it.
I'd much rather talk about Lignali.
Talk about Mr. McNally, then tell the pumpkin story.
No, I wanted to personally say thank you to Frank Lignali. The two things that I remember about my time up here was how we put together an incredible staff who pulled together an outstanding set of young men and women to participate in sports. He was always there with a smile, and I never heard the man say, that's good enough, because nothing was ever good enough for him. He expected more from you. And I remember he did that quite often. And the other thing I remember him saying quite often is, do you really need that? That's awful expensive. The very first trip I was on a bus with him in the wrestling team, he would sit in the front of the bus and he'd look for the restaurants that were having specials on the way home so we could get something to eat. When we got off the bus, he'd give you $2 and say, eat all you want. And then the next trip, he saw a restaurant that had children eat free. So our first 3 weight classes, he said, Turnbull, grab Corrier's hand. If anyone asks, you're the son. Cooner, you grab, and he had the lightweights holding hands with the 4 heavyweights. So he could get 4 meals out of it. Frank knew how to stretch a dollar, and he knew how to develop a program, and he knew how to pick coaches, and he was one of the mainstay of the athletic department. That was Frank Lignali. Frank, thank you.
Frank, just so you know, we also have what the 7 are getting here tonight. We have one special one to honor you tonight, too, for this to take home. So, thank you.
So you wanted the pumpkin?
So tell the pumpkin story.
Did I turn this off? Yeah, there it is. The pumpkin story. My junior year, we have a tendency to play pranks on our coaching staff, and some of us enjoyed some things we probably shouldn't have done. But anyhow, a Halloween my junior year, I thought, what could we do special for Coach Bub? And then I got Coach Corrier, Chuck Corrier, our heavyweight, and Craig Turnbull, one of our lightweights. I said, hey guys, let's go over to his house. What we'll do, he has a Jeep. And every morning he'd get up, he'd have his coffee and his toast, he'd get in his Jeep, come to work. So we snuck out there in the middle of the night, took raised the hood of the Jeep, took the battery out of the Jeep, laid it next to the back door, so when he comes out, he'd miss it, but when he's going back in, he'd see it. And we put a pumpkin where the battery used to be. And we hooked the terminals to the pumpkin's ears. We closed the hood, we drove off snickering, and as it turned out, next day practice, we came in, and coach says, "Hey guys, a funny thing happened this morning. I came out, click, click, nothing, you know?" And it was just really funny. But anyhow, I didn't know if you guys know it. We're having a special practice today. Shallis, you're over on this mat. Turnbull, you're over on this mat. And in 2 hours from now, you'll still be on that mat, and you'll be on that mat. Turnbull, you have Donnie Roan, NCAA champion. You have Greg Johnson, 3-time NCAA champion. You have Jack Davis as a backup. And I think he had Charlie Burke, too. And now, Shallis, you had Simpson, and you got Courier and Gordon up there. And I went, wonderful. Well, anyhow, so we're working out, and poor Turnbull's getting thumped pretty good down there. They're just fresh guy every minute coming in on him. For 2 hours, fresh guy. He's tongue's dragging, he's dragging. Well, I'm having my struggles too, but what Coach Bob didn't know that Courier was involved in this. And so every 2 match, I had to wrestle 2 minutes straight, and then the third minute, Courier come out, and I say, "Listen, you big sucker, you know, if you don't let up on me, I'm going to tell Coach you were involved too." "Oh, okay, got it." So I would take a minute break, you know, and I'd wrestle for 2, get a minute break, wrestle for 2, and Turnbull's getting killed down here. And he's down there going, he's looking up because he knows darn well what I told Courier, and he's down there getting thumped. But anyhow, Coach Bob really enjoyed the pumpkin in the Jeep trick, and I thought it was kind of cute, but anyhow, I don't know if it's a good story or not, but
I think it's a great story.
It was fun when we did it.
Would you like to ask Coach Bubba if he thought it was a good story? Coach, your left ear or your right ear? Did you hear all that? Huh?
He didn't know Courier was involved until about 10 years ago. Finally told him.
Let's go to Tilly. You've got the microphone in your hand, so let's ask you a question. Which of your teams do you think was better? 97, 98, or 99? 97 team was 4th at Nationals. 98 team brought home that nice 3rd place hardware. And 99 was 4th again. Which team was better?
I personally remember my sophomore year, the 97 team, being the best team that we had. I think that year we had the most national champion, the most times we won an event. We had some talent in every class, and Reagan Rickert and Laurie Radica. And then as a junior, we had Kelly Gould and Coach Miller and Coach Van Dyke went on and got another breaststroker, Nikki DiLoretto, who was a freshman. And so we covered almost every event. And we really, I thought that was, I don't know, Coach Miller could probably answer this better than I can, but that's the team that I remember, yeah, from top to bottom. And, you know, that year, lots of drama, but, you know, I think if those of you that are coaches out there know sometimes that when the more drama that you have, the better your teams are.
Coach Jacks, you had 3 PSAC championship teams, 66, 77, and 80. 66 obviously was special. 77, you had the drive against Millersville.
Right.
Billy May.
Right.
And 80, you played Kutztown, a team that had Reed.
Yeah, Andrew Reed, yeah.
The
receiver.
Who ended up being an NFL Hall of Famer. Which do you think was your best team there? Or was some another team your best team?
There's no question the team that got Clarion football started was the 1966 team, because after that we had a lot of credibility. We had a lot of Western Pennsylvania kids on that team. Jim Alcorn was at the perfect time. He made Clarion football. Yeah, I mean, even though he's sitting right here, after that, we were more recognized as we went around the high schools. We tried to recruit pretty hard, and now when you went in, they kind of heard about you, but that was a key game. I mean, we were on the run then, and we had credibility. So
we talked about this. You said maybe the '66 championship game wasn't so much the turning point as another game that you sort of thought that that the kids realized they could win. Maybe a year or two before '66.
Yeah, it was a year before that. I had come from Slippery Rock, and we had won 3 straight Western Conference championships and also state championship. So when I got here the first year, they beat us, but the next year, they were in contention for it, and don't we, in the last game of the year, I thought that was a major, major win for our program. We came back to beat Slippery Rock in just 2 years, and that led us into 65, a good year, and then the 66 team, I thought we really started to roll. But you're right, I did say something to you about that Slippery Rock game in the second year. That was a big, big turning point for us.
Having come from their staff, that also had to be a little special, too.
Yeah, it was really nice, though. The kids, we've been lifelong friends, and after the game, it was a lot of congratulations both way around. So, yeah, it was part of life, good experience. We all learned something.
Okay, thanks, Al. Mona, you two played for two great teams, and the third team wasn't so bad either. Which do you think was your best team? Was it the '93 team that went to Sweet 16, 24-6? Was it the '94 team that was 26-4 and went to the Elite Eight? Or do you think maybe even the '95 team was pretty darn good too? Which do you think was the best Clarion team you played on?
Speechless. I'm speechless.
That's okay.
Because I think they were all great seasons. You know, I can't really pinpoint.
You had Shelley Respecki as the
I
point guard,
can't
right?
really pinpoint a game because each year was a different obstacle we had to overcome.
Right.
Like my freshman year, I remember we played Shippensburg, and we had a starting five and one sub, and we still end up beating them. And that was like the first game I started. And so that was the high point. I think when we made it to the Elite Eight, I was overwhelmed. I mean, I don't know why, because, you know, we won state championships in Aliquippa, but that was a different level than conference play and, you know, in the PSA tournament. You know, you're competing against teams, you know, all over the country. And I think I came out, I was a little nervous and everything. And I think Amy and I were talking, I think we shouldn't have lost that game.
North Alabama?
Yeah, we shouldn't have lost that game. And we were talking about it in the hallway. I think we should have went all the way that year.
That was, and I won't say you're right because it is what it is, but that was a talented team. You look at Amy Kuhn, Shannon Coakley,
Yes.
Carlita Jones, who you still have a very close relationship with your
Yes.
other teammates. Maybe talk just a second about that. You all maintain a nice relationship. Is that just because of the ladies that were put together, or did you have a special bond?
I think we had a special bond. We took tons of pictures. I still have tons of pictures from my 4 years. And we all got along, and you know, we argued like sisters, but we always got along, and because we all had the same goal in mind, you know, and with Coach Parsons and Coach Ocker and Sid, you know, every practice they pushed us to do something, you know, do better, do more. You know, I remember staying after practice some days, and Pam would practice lobbing the ball into the post. We did that after practice for about a half an hour. So, you know, we all had the same goals, and we knew what we wanted to do, and
We almost got there.
yeah, we did. We did.
Thanks. Mr. Vukovic, we hand that microphone down to Pete. Pete, you were a third-round draft choice in '74, and you made it to the majors in '75, 1 year. That's not usual. You were talented, but you also had somebody at that White Sox organization that also believed in you too. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes. First of all, the reason I got there in such a short period of time was because Chuck Tanner from Newcastle, He knew all about me in sports. He had known about me when I was a freshman in high school, things of that nature. And Roland Heeman was the general manager of the Chicago White Sox at the time, and he wanted to bring up Steve Dunning, a pitcher that had been around a while, what have you. And Chuck told him, no. He says, we know what Steve Dunning is. I want Vuk, send him up here. And that was that. The general manager acquiesced, and I ended up going there. But I wouldn't have gotten there, and I swear to Almighty God, it just seemed that every time I went out on the mound, my whole career, regardless of what team I was with, my teammates always busted their tails. They ran into walls. They just played. I just thought they played their hearts out for me, more so, and it's not nice to say, more so than the other pitchers on the staff. And I had a couple of them let them know that, you know, we're going to take care of you. You care. You care more than all of them, and we're going to take care of you. I wanted to say to Mr. Lignelli, I want to thank you again, and I want to apologize to you. I think I probably drove you crazier than anyone else you've ever had in your tenure at Clarion. And I'm sorry for it. Trouble always seemed to find me, or I seem to find trouble. One other thing was about that IUP incident. I wanted to go to IUP because, like I said, it was 20 miles from Johnstown. And at that time, I was a young kid, and there was a young lady I was in love with, and I figured it was close to home, and I could drive home on weekends and see her. Well, we're going on 43 years of marriage, and that was pretty cool. It worked out fine. But as a reference to IUP, I was pitching a ball game against IUP my sophomore year, and they were pretty good. They were fourth in the country, NAI, and they were good. And I had a perfect game going. We played 7-inning doubleheaders, and I had a perfect game going with 2 outs in the 6th inning. And their coach, Archie Moore, I guess, who was in the minor leagues, he was relentless for 6 2/3 innings in the third base coaching box, just constantly trying to distract me and what have you, and it wasn't working. And finally, I got off the rubber and I walked halfway to third base, and I looked at him and I used expletives that Mr. Bub never used, and I let him know that if he didn't shut up, when I got back on that rubber, I was going to bury that hitter at home plate. And as fate would have it, the ball found his rib cage. He went down, sucking air, went to first base, got out of the inning, got the next man out, and ended up throwing Clarion's first no-hitter. I think they said it was the first. Yeah. But I missed a perfect game because I drilled that guy on purpose. But I will say that Mr. Moore never said another word after that kid got hit. And that was all the satisfaction I needed to take care of IUP.
Mr. Alcorn.
You're a sick puppy.
There's a number of conversations that I've had with Coach Jacks, and I'm wondering if you'd like to talk to him about this. This is your opportunity. I understand that there were lots of games, and you only played 2 years, so your numbers. But your numbers could have been a heck of a lot better if he didn't lay some of the starters down starting in the second half. Is that true, and would you like to tell them now what you think about that?
Well, actually, it is true because we had
You were so far ahead that you didn't play the second
We did,
half.
and he was not a type of guy that wants to win 63-0, that's a tribute to the type of guy he is. But actually, I can't remember the first. I guess Indiana, the first game that we played the whole game, and that's true. I mean, I guess people didn't think of numbers as much back then as they do today. When you look at it, but they, everybody's numbers would have been much higher if we didn't have a classy coach, but didn't want to rub it in. Good man.
Good for you, Al. But he could have had 6,000 passing yards if you'd have let him in the game.
We had a couple games where it was 35-0 at the half.
Yeah.
You're going to just keep pouring it on?
Yeah. Some guys do. You didn't.
Jim, you were drafted in the 11th round by the Cleveland Browns, and they were pretty good. They're maybe not so good today, but they were pretty good back then.
Yeah.
What was it like being in camp? And then you have a piece of trivia you told me about. I'd be interested in you sharing with the folks. But tell them how it was going to camp with the Cleveland Browns and some of the guys they had.
Well, that was sort of their big years. I mean, Jim Brown had retired a couple years before, but they had Leroy Kelly, and Frank Ryan was at the end of his career, and they had just traded Dick Shiner, I think, for Bill Nelson. He became a pretty good quarterback for them, and they had a lot of all-pro linemen. They were a good team, and he just went there and did the best they could, and sort of caught a numbers game with quarterbacks, and after that I went down. I played a couple years with the Wheeling Ironmen, which was, they had a minor league going back then. That there were a lot of really good players in that league also, and it just didn't work out for that. But
tell them about your grandson.
Well, I got 11 grandkids, and several of them are pretty interested in sports, and over the years they find out that I played, and so they're looking at the NFL draft, and they're looking at the size of all these people, and they said, hey Pops, how tall are you? I said, well, I said, I never quite made 6 foot. I said, even back then I was a little bit undersized, under height for that level, and I said the most I ever got was San Diego Chargers Scott measured me at 5'11" and 3/4. He said, but you got drafted by the Browns. I said, yeah, I got drafted by the Browns. He says, what? And so they start clicking in present day, and they see Johnny Manziel's not real big, and so they got a trivia question. They ask their friends. They say, hey, who are the only 2 quarterbacks that the Cleveland Browns drafted in the last 50 years that were under 6 foot? And they go, I don't know, Johnny Manziel and my grandfather. That was a good time.
That's special.
And gave it my best shot, but it didn't work out.
Nah, it's still special. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks. You're welcome. Thanks.
All right, Mr. Wells, I have another question for you, but you had something you wanted to talk about the women at Clarion, so why don't you go ahead with that, then I'll ask you your final question.
Yes, I know this is about. I know this is about the Hall of Fame tonight, and I commend you. And before I congratulate you, there's another Hall of Fame group that's here tonight that I would really like to acknowledge, the women of Clarion. And first how it came to me was when Coach D, once again, I actually have been coaching high school boys basketball. Then I went over to coach girls basketball. And Coach D asked me, what do you know about girls? I'm gonna get back to you on that. So, first of all, while I was here, my association at Clarion, the people I've come across, the ladies I've come across, I would like to acknowledge them. Mrs. Di Gregorio, I watched her raise her beautiful family while she was still going to school. I think she got about 3 or 4 doctorates, and as she went through, Mrs. Bashnagel, I don't think she's here, but all these people were in my life. I'd like to acknowledge meeting and watching the dignity that a lot of the ladies up here had, like Mrs. Jacks, Mrs. Bub, Mrs. Green, Dr. Whitney. I'd like to acknowledge Dr. Day Day, who has helped see so many young, troubled kids come up here and leave here as young women. They might have been in trouble at some point in their life, but she guided them through, and she has been a great friend. I'd like to acknowledge Mrs. Paula Herman, Rich's wife. Her story is inspirational, and it should be a book. The things that, and it's their story to tell.
Besides living with me.
I had to give her a special medal for living with you. But her story is inspirational. Just the fight that she has is just unbelievable. And I'd like to acknowledge, there's a girl who went up here about 40 years ago named Diane Logan. She raised 3 young boys into men. The young men were Ryan Wells, Reggie Wells Jr., and me. I needed a lot of help also. I knew that when I met her up here that she was pretty. Then I found out she was smart. Then I found out she could help me write papers. And then I found out how hard she worked. So all these women have come here, they've worked so hard. They're beautiful, loving. And I know you didn't know where this was going, but when Coach D asked me, what do I know about girls? I know that they could become wonderful women associated with Clarion. And it's a tribute to you, and I wish you an early, happy Mother's Day. And you've raised and coddled so many of us up here that the young ladies in the audience, I know Coach Krista Mosey, Coach D, and the team that she played on for me, she's the goalie up here for the soccer team. They won a state title in spite of me. And I'm watching her grow, and she's going to be a beautiful woman of Clarion also. So I commend you, and I thank you so much. And one last thing, I know you didn't ask me, Rich, but it seems like it's that kind of night anyway, so I would like to really commend the Hall of Famers who's coming into this, and you're making this group so much better. A lot of these people here, well, how I got in, I have no idea, but they were some of the best in this conference, the state, but really they were some of the best athletes in the world. When I would watch them on television, watch them compete in the Olympics, watch them in the NCAA tournaments, I know it wasn't too much said about the swimmers and the divers. They've been great ever since I've been around. And I just say, I'm so proud to be from Clarion, and I really would like to just see this continue forever and ever. I would like for my esteemed colleagues, the basketball team thought we could take some of those wrestlers. I'm glad they were really well-disciplined and didn't take us on the challenge, because they were really it's just a wonderful experience being at Clarion. I thank you so much for having me here this evening. Thank you.
I think that's just about a perfect place to end. Did anybody else have anything they wanted to say? Let's hear it one more time for these celebrations.